From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis and Josh Nelson.
Everyone, welcome to Sox Machine Live. I am Josh Nelson alongside the managing editor of SoxMachine.com and co-host of the podcast. It's Jim Margulis as we are streaming live this wonderful Thursday night, September 28, 2023, as the Chicago White Sox just wrapped up their series against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And guess what? They lost that series. But hey, at least they won the third game. They won the third game 3-1. The first game of the series, they were up 4-1 after 2 innings and then proceeded to allow 14 unanswered runs to the Diamondbacks. And then it was just a casual 3-0 loss in game 2 as the offense is working wonders for the White Sox in that series against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And the Diamondbacks are a very good team. They needed to win that series, especially when we talk about the MLB Postseason Race later in the show. But we're going to be recapping what happened quickly against Arizona. But this is it, Jim. This is the last call of 2023 for the Chicago White Sox. Yeah, I know you're heartbroken. I know you're heartbroken. Yeah, one more series left, folks, as the San Diego Padres come to town, who are not mathematically eliminated from the postseason quite yet. So we'll get into that. The way they can make the playoffs is insane.
Hader wishes they were, but they're not.
Yeah, they're still alive. Still alive. So the San Diego Padres somehow, some way are still alive for the postseason. So we'll see on how they react to the last weekend of the 2023 season. But Jim, back to the White Sox losing another series against Arizona. What was like your big takeaway from these 3 games?
Well, it could have been worse, I think, was my big takeaway when you watched how the bullpen pitched in the first game, and then you have Luis Patino pitching a bullpen game in the second game, and then Touki Toussaint, who is occasionally guilty of the early exits, and sure enough, he left 5 innings for the bullpen to cover. Like, that could have been terrible. It could have been 14, 15, 16 runs every game, but the bullpen more or less held it together. Aaron Bummer pitched well. So, I mean, it doesn't mean much in terms of 2024 and projecting what kind of team might be there, what kind of bullpen might be there. But in terms of just watchability, getting the season over with, nobody getting hurt, not doing any more damage, like, that's more or less where I'm at. Like, get everybody out in an orderly fashion, kind of like a fire alarm, just usher everybody towards the exit safely. And if everything burns down behind them, at least they have their phones.
Yeah, Yohan Moncada hit a home run in the third game of the series, so he has reached 10 home runs this season. Woo! Double digits for Yohan Moncada. Andrew Vaughn also hit a home run
10 times as many homers as Tim Anderson.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, especially when you put it that way. Yikes.
Yeah.
Vaughn hit another homer, so he's got 21 in the season, and he's also reached 80 RBIs, which I think he will eventually lead the team again in back-to-back years, and that will get brought up when people are trying to continue saying that Andrew Vaughn is a good hitter, that he leads the White Sox at RBIs. I do like the RBI stat. I know Jim also likes the RBI stat. We're going to talk about just how woeful this White Sox offense has been in 2023. It's faint praise when you're saying that Andrew Vaughn is a good hitter because he leads the team in RBIs. Somebody has to lead the team in RBIs, and he's lucky that Luis Robert unfortunately has to miss the final week of the 2023 season due to injury. But yeah, the lineups that we have been seeing, it's obviously the end of the season. Mm-hmm. And like half of these guys that are in the lineup, I just look at every single day, Jim, like they shouldn't even be on this team next year. Like if the White Sox are serious about contending in 2024, half the lineup should not be on the team.
I think that's why we're seeing Chris Getz go from being somebody who can turn around the White Sox in a hurry and hit the ground running and fill the gaps because he knows the ins and outs, to being like, oh God, like this could take years. And I mean, it's a bait and switch as far as Jerry Reinsdorf's concerned, because Reinsdorf was telling fans that there's no time to waste. And, Branch Rickey would need a year and so on and so forth. And like Chris Getz needs a year. Chris Getz needs 2 years. Like he's the guy who's in charge of minor league development and said he knew the ins and outs. And now he's trying to figure out like how to get certain departments, even with other departments, in terms of how advanced they are in terms of how they're working. Like it's not feasible to expect a quick turnaround with this team. This is late stage White Sox. It's falling apart. It's years, if not a decade, of neglect in certain areas and half-assing it in others. And it's going to take, if not a complete gut job or a teardown, because like there's just not much to sell. At the very least, it's just going to take patience and doing the job right. So like, it doesn't bother me that Getz says that, he doesn't exactly know yet, because like nobody should. He shouldn't know. Like the promise that he should know, or he'd be the guy to know, was terrible. So I'm relieved that he's not being like, yeah, I got to turn this around in a hurry. So I appreciate the moderation on his end. It's just Jerry Reinsdorf being terrible and a special combination of arrogant and lazy that I think is really hard to replicate, that only the moneyed can pull off, I think is what is frustrating about it. But if you try to keep Getz independent of that because he has a job to do and you hope that he does the job well, it's like I appreciate the more sober tone he's taking over the past week or so, and saying that like, oh, the answers are going to be hard to find.
The biggest acts are visiting Chicago this summer, on top of all the baseball games and other great concerts, theater shows too. It can be quite the chore and headache trying to secure tickets to all of these shows and events. Buying tickets shouldn't be stressful. Use Game Time to purchase your tickets. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for sports, music, comedy, theater near you. They've got killer deals on last-minute tickets, and their best price guarantee helps eliminate stressing over tickets. If you find tickets in the same section or even row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's why Game Time is the fastest growing ticketing app in the country. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and get $20 off your first purchase using our promo code SOXMACHINE. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create an account and use our promo code SOXMACHINE for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
There's no I in team, but there is one in Indeed, and that's the hiring platform that you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy, because Indeed does the hard work for you. They show you the candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your description immediately after you post, so you can hire faster. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports, and support the show by saying that you heard it on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Yeah, he's already done the deep dive, right? And he's bringing in new faces, new voices into the front office.
It sounds like he did a deep dive and he needs to do a deeper dive.
Well, that's the problem, Jim, right? It's, I lost my wedding ring in the pond. The pond's only 3 feet deep. Let me search for it. Oh, crap. The pond goes like 9 feet deep. I have to search further down the depths of the pond. That's Chris Getz right now.
Yeah, there's Riptide.
Right.
There's no undertow.
He just thought, there's only like 3 feet. Like it's shallow water. And then you take a step and you drop. And he realizes that he is taking that step. And I'm going to visualize what this drop is. And I think this is where a lot of the conversation that Chris Getz in his new front office and Pedro Grifol, unfortunately, is going to be part of those conversations. Let's look at the last 10 years for White Sox team OPS plus. So again, no matter what, 100 is league average, and every point above or below 100 is a percentage point above or below league average. And in 2013, that team that went 63-99 had a cumulative team OPS plus of 84. They were 16% below league average. And as you can see during the first rebuild into we're mediocre into the big rebuild, the team was still below league average. And then in the shortened season, they were way above league average. The offense had a big year, even in a shortened season. Jose Abreu won the American League MVP. 2021, the offense was still quality. Last year, when the team finished 500, we mentioned that the offense was short and that they needed to add another impact bat if they were going to turn this around. They didn't do that, or at least they thought they did with Andrew Benintendi. This offense is at 83 OPS plus. This is worse than they were a decade ago. And I had to look it up because today was free StatHead day on baseballreference.com, Jim. This is the worst performing White Sox offense towards league average since 1986, when that 86 White Sox team, the only year that Hawk Harrelson was the general manager, had a team OPS plus of 80. So it's safe to say for a lot of people listening to this or watching this that are around our age, Jim, this is the worst performing White Sox offense of our lifetime. And if they're going to turn this around, this is the biggest area of need that they need to turn around here. And this is where I'm getting to as far as like with my metaphor, standing in a pond for Chris Getz. And to your point, Jim, with his most recent press conference, understanding that he needs to take a more deeper dive into the White Sox problems. Here's your deeper dive, man. Like when you have a 97 team OPS plus, okay, you can do a deep dive. When you look at the numbers and it's worse than you think it is, then yeah, it takes a deeper dive because you have to go down the deep end to get to the bottom of what the hell is going on here. And man, it's going to take a lot to turn around that woeful of an offense, but that's how bad it's been, Jim. This is the worst White Sox offense since 1986.
Yeah. And I mean, like the through line in all those years is depth, basically stay healthy going through it. It's like they had a okay front line of talent, but as soon as somebody got hurt or somebody got old or declined sooner than expected, that's what happened. Either they had to ride with, and that predates, or that doesn't count Adam Dunn's first terrible year, but just whenever they have a bad veteran, like they have to stick with that bad veteran. Adam LaRoche would be in that time frame of just, well, he's the only one here. We don't have better ideas because it's just, we're thin and we don't produce players internally, or the players we produce internally need years to get up to league average themselves, to get up to speed. So, there's that. There's also the fact that I'm amazed that this is it's not a rebuilding team right now. It's just a, skeleton crew team, but they tore down the roster and they made trades. And yet Lenine Sosa is the youngest guy on the team, but they've run out some lineups where nobody is born in the 2000s. Everybody's born in the 1990s or earlier, perhaps. I don't know the oldest player. I've kind of lost track of that in terms of when their birth date is, but probably Elvis Andrus 80s. But it's a case where if your team's that bad, you usually want them to be young to where there's some precocious talent there. You can't expect a 22-year-old to hit the ground running this first go around. But even Oscar Colas was old for a rookie, or on the older side for a rookie. And the fact that they're rolling out an outfield, 3 out of 4 outfielders they used on Thursday, Gavin Sheets, Tyler Naquin, Trace Thompson, none of whom should be on the team next year, or at least especially in an outfield capacity. Corey Lee, not sure if he's part of the plans.
No.
He's just, flailing away. He's, I didn't think he should have been called to begin with. And he's at least proving that point. But the bottom 4 of the roster, or I guess you can include 5 because Naquin replaced Sheets, but they all can go. And Oscar Colas, thoroughly buried in the doghouse. I wish they did call up Colas so the White Sox could option him down again. So Pedro Grifol could, feel like a real manager. Because apparently
I thought you were going to say, so I could feel like a real man so I can bully someone again.
Yeah. Real manager, parentheses. Just because that's the only guy who suffers consequences for his actions. Tim Anderson's back, his OPS is back below 600 and one for his last 16, going to be coasting the exit and still batting leadoff. It's just on and on and on. So yeah, it's bad. The outfield is thin, especially beyond Luis Robert and Andrew Benintendi, who's been bad this year. not good. And like there are no quick fixes. Like Lenyn Sosa, not a quick fix, even if he's worth some at bats. Like Jose Rodriguez, you have to count on him looking like Lenyn Sosa if he gets a chance. Colson Montgomery not there yet. Brian Ramos not there yet. So there's no internal help that can even like bridge a roster to the Montgomery Ramos part without losing a ton of games.
When did Tyler Naquin, by the way, join the White Sox organization? Like when they announced they called him up, I had no idea he was part of Charlotte.
I want to say it was like early September or something like that.
Okay.
Like waivers.
Do they hate Victor Reyes?
Maybe.
Do they not want to give him some kudos? Like, hey, nice job at AAA, man. You played hard all season long. Let's call you up. No, they didn't want to.
Well, he doesn't really play center. I guess if they want somebody fake center like you, but
they quick, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. But yeah, that's either that or like Victor Reyes is just not. He's also in the doghouse, but in the AAA doghouse. But no, Naquin was August 8th, so
I had no idea.
They've made some waiver claims and such since then, but yeah, he was early August.
Another crazy thing, like in 2020, obviously the shortened season, the White Sox that year hit 96 home runs in 60 games. They would have easily been on pace to surpass 200 in that season. But when you just look at 162 game schedules, the White Sox as a team have not hit more than 200 home runs since 2012. And we know that ball go far, team go far, and you play in the most home run hitter ballpark in the American League at Guarantee Rate Field. Jim, I feel like we're a broken record here because we've been harping on this since the American League Division Series loss to the Houston Astros. Like, you don't have enough offense to win the American League pennant. And Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams ignored us, and they're unemployed because of their inability to fix this offense. Now you have new people coming in, and you got someone like Brian Bannister that will hopefully help out with the pitching side. But like, if Josh Barfield and this Gene Watson guy are trying to get in the ear of Chris Getz and try to turn this around, again, for those that are watching YouTube, I'll bring up this graphic. This is the team OPS of 83. And it is the worst, again, since 1986. So this is where you got to turn this around. And I think it's going to require a lot of new faces if you are being serious about contending in 2024. Because what's the other plan? Prayer? Hope? Faith? Like, you already went through that. That was your plan A for 2023, and look where it landed you.
Yeah, or as John mentioned in the comments here, highlighting that they may as well move the fences back like they did in Baltimore. And, I mean, that's kind of how it's looking right now in terms of if they really want to turn around fast. And that was just a case of like, I don't know if there is one team that demoralizes the White Sox like the Yankees demoralized the Orioles, like Gleyber Torres that year, just putting every other fly ball over the left field wall, and the Orioles saying, fine, we're moving the wall back 35 feet. Just a huge cutout where all of Gleyber Torres's homers went. And it turns out it was a brilliant strategy, but unfortunately the White Sox, like, if they don't draw walks, it's hard, and they don't run the bases well. Moving the fences back won't help them. Like, Baltimore can run, Baltimore can cover some ground in the outfield. The White Sox would have to do that, and they're not there yet. So I think that strategy is limited. Also, the White Sox have tried that before in various iterations. They moved the fences in, moved the fences back, temporary fences, trying to get a guy over 30 homers. I think it was in the I think they did in the 40s, and I think they did again in the 60s, and it didn't work either time. So it's been a pretty rough history when it comes to fence lengths in the White Sox, because it's trying to paper over more persistent deficiencies. But I think that's the one thing, you mentioned that just not hitting homers and broken records, saying the same thing over and over. Like, it is a relief that Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn are gone. And like, I know there's like a tendency to be like, oh, you don't want to like dance on somebody's grave. And And this might be just a slow dance on somebody's grave, but not a happy one. Just
not quite a polka.
Yeah, not a mosh pit, but it's a case of just being so tired of it was like the smugness at the end too, like we might know a thing or two better than the people on the outside who they don't know
smugness.
They don't have access to all the data or the conversations we have on and on. They're just year after year the results aren't there, and jumping in the market to sign Adam Eaton, being like that's a bad idea, and it turns out it's a bad idea, and they just continued being smug and continue making the same mistakes. So I'm happy that they're out, just because Chris Getz coming in. No successes to point to. He doesn't have 2005 to point to. I guess that's what we can say, is that he's completely separated from that as a player, as an executive. So he can't say, well, there's people didn't think we're going to beat the projections in 2005. And we signed a bunch of guys for 1-year deals, and look at what that team did. He can't say that. So that's a relief. And that I think gives him a little bit of humility, or gives him I think raises his awareness that he hasn't accomplished anything, and he's coming into this pretty much without anything. He's lucky to have a job. He's lucky to have this job. He might be a farm director somewhere else, or he might have an acumen to certain things that might have allowed him to climb a ladder in another organization, but having this job at this age with what he's accomplished, only with the White Sox. So I think there's some awareness probably that he knows that, and I haven't detected the same amount of how dare you question me, or how dare you have doubts. So I'm encouraged by that. I think the Bannister hire is good. I think the Barfield hire is different enough to where I don't know what to think, and that is good. I'd rather not know what to think than be this kind of stinks. Pedro Grifol, I didn't know what to think about that, and turns out it stunk. But the process was sound. They tried, didn't work. Unfortunately, it doesn't sound like they're going to learn anything from it, because Jerry Reinsdorf doesn't want to pay 2 managers again. But that's kind of where I'm at with Getz, is I am not optimistic. I think he's probably the product of a flawed owner who's just getting worse at owning a team. And so he's probably going to fail, but he hasn't done anything individually yet to make me write the person off. And I'm going to take solace in that as long as I can.
Here is a crazy factoid. Right now, the team on base percentage is below 300. And there's a good chance they're going to finish with an on base percentage as a team below 300 this year. That would be the worst team on base percentage since 1968. The last time the White Sox had a team on base percentage below 300 was in 1968, when they had a team on base percentage of 284. Prior to today's game against the Arizona Diamondbacks, the White Sox were at 293, and they barely had any base runners today. So that might be closer to 290, and then they had these 3 games against the San Diego Padres, and unless they're high scoring, the White Sox generate a ton of base runners. They're probably going to have an on-base percentage below 300, which means this would be the worst on-base percentage during the tenure of Jerry Reinsdorf as chairman of the Chicago White Sox.
Well,
I can't believe we're saying this, Jim. Mm-hmm. The core, what they being Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams, and adding Chris Getz being the farm director, what they had traded for, what they had drafted, what they had signed for internationally. And it got them, again, an above-average offensive season in 2020, got them into the postseason. They were above average again in 2021. They won the American League Central. They were below league average last year, and it hurt them as they finished 581-81. They ignored everyone, and now we are talking about, with 3 games left to go, one of the worst offensive seasons in franchise history. That's what we're talking about here, folks. And
yeah, I mean,
I don't know how it gets any better, Jim.
Yeah.
Right? Because, again, so many of these guys, to your point earlier, they're not young. This isn't 22-year-old Eloy Jimenez and 23-year-old Yohan Moncada and 21-year-old Luis Robert trying to figure out hit major league pitching. No! No, most of these guys are hitting arbitration or their final years of their contract or contract options coming up. Like, again, this is the number one area entering the last week of the regular season. And when you watch these 3 games against the Arizona Diamondbacks and you see these lineups, it's like, man, these lineups are awful. Like, historically bad lineups the White Sox are trying out there because that's just the state of the roster. And then you take a deep dive into the numbers and it's like, oh my gosh, this is the worst offense of like my White Sox fandom. Holy crap, this is the lowest on base percentage since 1968. Like, a lot of White Sox fans, a lot of people who listen to this podcast and go to Sox Machine every single day, Jim, they've never seen an offense this bad in their lifetime.
Well, the thing is, if you mentioned 68, that was the year of the pitcher. They lowered the mounds afterwards because offense was so suppressed. So, I mean, like when you look at, I'm looking at the lowest OBPs in team history. It's, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. The top 15 are all either the 3 years 1960s before they lowered the mound, so 66, 67, 68, and then all before World War I. And the 2023 White Sox. So the dead ball era, the deadest of the dead ball era, the year of the pitcher and the years preceding it that forced a rule change in order to create offense because it was just the game had completely reverted back to the dead ball era, and this year's team. And then like if you go outside the top 15, number 16, the 2013 White Sox 302, number 17, the 2018 White Sox 302. And then it's finally 1988. So like it's the Rick Hahn teams and the 60s teams where just the game was screwed up, and World War I when they basically like hit potatoes with railroad ties. Like that's kind of what you're looking at for the context of this offense. So like there hasn't been a normal offense or like a White Sox team in a normal offensive environment, or at least like a power friendly offensive environment that has been nearly as bad as this offense. And you can only compare it to completely warped ones in order to bring to give this team some company.
Again, there's going to be a lot of focus in the offseason, especially in the Sox Machine offseason plan projects, and try to fill out a pitching rotation, which I get it because you got to get through the marathon of a 162 game season. Pitching depth is still going to be a concern for the Chicago White Sox, and pitching is not cheap. So that's going to eat up most of whatever offseason budget that Jerry Reinsdorf is going to allow Chris Getz, whatever that number is going to be. But, you know, with Getz talking about the deep dives and having to take a deeper dive, and he was also asked by Bruce Levine of 670 The Score about the status of Tim Anderson, which we talked about that in our last episode of the Sox Machine podcast. You can also check out our friends from the 108 Beef Loaf. He also put up a video, very similar opinion that we have, that it's probably best that the White Sox do move on and buy out the $1 million contract for Tim Anderson to make him a free agent, maybe renegotiate with him during the offseason and bring him back if the phone calls get cold or nobody's calling for his services. Tim Anderson doesn't help you here. Tim Anderson does not fix your on-base percentage problem. He does not fix your power problem. Andrew Benintendi
doesn't fix the defense problem.
Doesn't fix the defense problem, but you know, a 322 on-base percentage, yeah, that's good in context compared to everybody else in the White Sox, but it's going to have to be higher than that to be real impactful. And Yohan Mikata, he's been great in his last 40 games, but, you know, you play more than 40 games in a Major League Baseball season. He's been having a terrible time being consistent enough over a 162-game season. Andrew Vaughn's on-base percentage is below 320. The outfield is a mess. Second base is a mess. And, oh, my gosh, they may have made the catching position even worse because Corey Lee's not a major leaguer. Like, if you brought up a shopping list for Chris Getz, like if you and I did that, Jim, maybe that's a future podcast episode. You and I create a shopping list. Like, this is what you need to do in the offseason, Chris Getz, to realistically build a White Sox team that could win the American League Central in 2024. I mean, half of that list, more than half of that list, is just going to be machine. Offense. I mean, it's just a time machine. Yeah. Get the 2020 White Sox and bring them over. Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? Like,
yeah,
I can't believe how bad it's gotten.
Yeah, looking at the team OBPs, like Luis Robert, like as good as he is, 315. And I don't want to like knock Luis Robert because like he does so much well, like, 38 homers, great. Center field defense, outstanding. Runs the bases well, terrific. Like, that's all good. But we've talked about this before. Like if I'm Chris Getz and I'm trying to design this team, like Luis Robert's around, he's going to be in the foundation of the team. And like, he's the only one who really can stake a claim to that. Like Dylan Cease kind of on the outside looking in based on how many guys he walks and how rough he's looked. Maybe Brian Bannister has an answer for him, but like right now I'm not considering him like a foundational piece. Like it's Luis Robert and that's about it. But if I'm Chris Getz, I'm looking like I got to compensate for the one thing Luis Robert doesn't do well, which is get on base around hits. Like if he goes 0 for 12, like it's an 0 for 12. It's on 0 for 9 with 3 walks, or it's not, like there's no way to compensate when he goes cold. So like he needs to be able to find OBP guys. So like that Robert's one flaw doesn't match everybody else's flaw. And that drags down Robert's contributions as a result. So like if that takes a few years, fine. If it like comes a case where 2 years from now, or maybe even after next year, and like I don't know where OBP is coming from, maybe you trade Luis Robert just because like you're not going to max out his skill set based on what he's providing, and maybe it makes sense to like try to get 2 or 3 players who maybe can just change the shape of the roster because he can't do it himself. Like that's obviously like the darkest timeline outcome, but just I think that's what I make my priority is like whatever you do, don't make the team drag Luis Robert down and turn him into somebody who makes a problem worse.
In a perfect world, or in a video game world, the 2 guys hitting in front of Luis Robert in the lineup would have on-base percentages of 350 or better.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, out of the 38 home runs that he hit, 28 of them or something like that are not solo shots. Like to your point, he doesn't get on base at a high clip, but man, when Luis Robert gets a hold of it, he does serious damage. And you should have guys that can get on base a lot more consistent in front of Luis Robert. He's just hitting so many solo home runs because Tim Anderson and Andrew Benintendi don't get on base consistently. Like that's the problem there. And again, Tim Anderson is not going to help you fix that problem for next year, no matter how much faith that you want to have in him, that he could reverse course and turn back the clock to his 2019 or 2020 self. Like, honestly, Tim Anderson at 350 on base percentage, he needs to hit 325 or 330, and that wins the batting title. Like, that's the only way Tim Anderson gets to that level of on base percentage. Andrew Benintendi would probably have to hit 310 in order to have that high of on base percentage. Those guys are not the guys that you want getting ahead of the Luis Robert in your lineup to turn this offense around. And you don't have anybody else that has that skill set. So I'm grateful that Chris Getz publicly has said that they need to take a deeper dive. They need to have more of an exhaustive conversation. That was the word that Getz used, exhaustive, when speaking with Tim Anderson and what they're going to do and what options, what ideas that they may have for Tim Anderson in the off season. But boy, entering the last weekend of the season, everyone keeping an eye on what to do in this offseason, how to get this team turned around. We're talking about an all-time worst White Sox offense, and you don't have a lot of help right now in AAA. There might be some help coming soon in AA, but boy, if Jerry Reinsdorf, Jim, really wants to compete next year, he better open up the checking book, and you're going to have to spend like the Mets and Padres have recently. And I know there's a lot of pushback on that those teams are not winning, but you have way too much work to do to turn this ship around.
Give me the best players 7 one-year contracts worth $10 million a piece can afford. Like,
no kidding.
Yeah, it's pretty much what it would be. Like, let's spread it real thin.
Yeah, no kidding. So, again, that's the woeful offense, and that's enough White Sox talk. So let's talk about what has been of interest to me. Well, one last day in the White Sox talk on the Tankathon. They are looking to be in the 4th slot right now. I give it up for the Colorado Rockies, man. When you're talking about tanking, losing 9 of your last 10 games is one hell of a way to ensure the White Sox cannot catch you. The White Sox need the Rockies to win out. The White Sox need to lose out to catch the Rockies. So more likely than not, the White Sox will have a 13.25% chance of getting the number 1 pick in the 2024 Major League Baseball draft when they have that lottery during the winter meetings. So that's where the White Sox currently are. Right now, it looks like they have the best odds of getting the number 4 overall pick of the 2024 draft. But again, we'll see what happens with the lottery. All right, so the MLB postseason race. We saw the Seattle Mariners at home against the Houston Astros. The Astros really beat up on Seattle pitching. And the Texas Rangers did not get swept by the Angels. We were a little concerned that we didn't have a good handle on the American League West. And thankfully, the Rangers took care of business. So the Rangers, who have won 7 of their last 10 games, are currently 89-69 right now. They're 2.5 games ahead of Houston. They're 4 games ahead of Seattle. And the Rangers and the Mariners have a 4-game series. It starts tonight in Seattle. That's how the season ends for both teams. 4 games left to go against each other in Seattle, and the Mariners would have to sweep the Rangers in order for the Mariners to catch the Texas Rangers. Meanwhile, the Houston Astros are going to have a 3-game series against the Arizona Diamondbacks, a team that just won the series against the White Sox, and that will start tomorrow. The Astros, 2.5 games back of the Rangers. They have a little bit more breathing room when it comes to American League wild card. They're a game and a half ahead of Seattle for that 6th spot, and they're a half game back of Toronto for the 5th seed. So after this midweek series, Jim, kind of a missed opportunity here for Seattle. They had such a great record against the Houston Astros, but to lose 2 out of 3 at home against the Astros, I wonder here, is Seattle sunk? Is this too big of a hole to climb out in the final weekend of the season?
I mean, I'd like to say, seems like it. I'd like to say, but like, I feel more confident saying yes than no, but just with how many takes have gone wrong immediately after coming out of my mouth is just, makes me hesitant.
Monday, can you believe it? The Mariners swept the Rangers.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like, rock, paper, scissors all over again. But yeah, I mean, they do seem like a little bit lost, and like, man, that Hector Neris going after Julio Rodriguez.
Did they figure out what was going on? Because the Seattle broadcast was trying to figure out, and they went back through old footage during the season if there was some type of headbutting or heated moments between those two, and they just couldn't find anything.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, and there was accusation that Neris said a homophobic slur. Neris denied it. Rodriguez wouldn't say, but Rodriguez was shocked because he thought like he and Neris were like friends, or like they play on the World Baseball Classic team together, like thought they'd gotten along. So, I mean, like, I don't know if it's the Astros realizing like, hey, we haven't done anything colossally stupid in a while to get everybody to hate us. Let's, Hector, your turn, get in there. But yeah, I mean, that's, that seems like it's a moment of indignity, I think, for Seattle, because it's one thing to like, lose and, lose a series, a key series to Houston home. Another thing to like, have the Astros like going at you and disrespecting you for no good reason, and just, extra salt in the wound there. So I'm hoping it's not the case. Like, I'm hoping they can rally against the Rangers and like Houston flops out. But I mean, like, it's hard to see the math working that way.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's an uphill climb. And again, this is, as far as the weekend here, the Rangers 4 games in Seattle, the Astros 3 games against the Diamondbacks. And I mean, the Rangers have been great at home this year. That offense has been wonderful. It's not going to be an easy series for them against Seattle. And to your point, Jim, whenever you want to count out Seattle, they will shock you. And I could easily see them winning 3 out of 4 in this weekend and getting to 88 wins and really forcing some pressure on the Toronto Blue Jays, because the Blue Jays here, again, they're a game and a half. They're 2 games ahead of Seattle. But the Blue Jays are playing right now against the Yankees. And they have a weekend series against the Tampa Bay Rays. Like, this is not an easy way to finish the season for the Toronto Blue Jays. So the Blue Jays, they should feel a little comfortable here, but they've lost their last 2 games. And they could be right into the frying pan here if they stumble this weekend against Tampa Bay. So those are the two big series that I'm going to be watching. Obviously, I don't think there's a bigger series in this final weekend than Rangers and Mariners. But also the Blue Jays and Rays is a very interesting series. Like, I'm with you, Jim. I don't want to count out Seattle just quite yet, but that was a painful series loss for them at home against Houston, and they're going to need a lot of help. Like, not only do they have to take care of business against the Rangers and pretty much almost need to sweep the Rangers, but if they can't sweep the Rangers, they need a lot of help from Arizona, and they need a lot of help from Tampa Bay to see if they can claim one of those last playoff spots. So it's going to be a fascinating weekend in the American League postseason race.
Yeah, and Toronto was my preseason World Series pick, and I'm not feeling great about that. I mean, getting to postseason, you have a chance, but just the whole year's been kind of like this. The offense has been disappointing. The pitching staff's been good, but not like good enough to keep up with, like, say, Tampa Bay and Baltimore for how good their offenses are. So it feels like a little bit of a mismatched team, and fortunately, just other teams have had bigger problems. Also, the Yankees are 500 again, so.
Something to watch. Can they stay above 500?
Yeah, but it's like 81-77. So it's like when you listen to Yankees fans or Yankees media or just follow their tweets, like, they sound as depressed as White Sox fans should be, and yet no losing season since when?
92.
Yeah, 92. So yeah.
I mean, there's a whole generation of Yankees fans that have never seen a losing season.
Yeah, no matter how bad they've been, no matter who they have to rely on to get by, no matter who gets hurt, still, like, this is the worst they can do, is 81 wins.
Trade ya. We just talked about the worst offense we've seen pretty much in our lifetime. Spoiled brats, you Yankees fans. Moving over to the National League, and it's been chaotic for a long time. And the Phillies, they're in. They don't have to worry about anything. The Phillies are finishing strong. Real strong again, Jim. They have won 7 straight games. The Arizona Diamondbacks are a game and a half up on the Cubs and the Marlins right now for that 5th seed. So if the Diamondbacks can win a game against the Astros this weekend, it's looking like to be Phillies and Diamondbacks in that first round. So who will the Milwaukee Brewers play? And if, again, when you look at the standings here, and those that are watching our YouTube stream or watching the video, it's, in the standings, the Cubs and the Marlins are tied. However, the Marlins own the tiebreaker. So if the Cubs and Marlins finish with identical records, the Marlins would move to the postseason, the Cubs would be knocked out. So right now, that 6th seed would be the Marlins visiting the Milwaukee Brewers. The Cubs are traveling to Milwaukee for that 3-game series, and I'm sure the Brewers will treat that like a playoff series as an opportunity to knock out the Chicago Cubs so they don't have to repeat as far as that series in the first round of the playoffs. We talked about San Diego. Okay, so again, the Cubs and the Marlins are at 82 wins, okay? In order for the Padres to make the playoffs, the Padres have to sweep the White Sox, not a tall task. Mm-hmm. And they need the Reds, the Marlins, and the Cubs to lose out. That's the only way the Padres make the playoffs. Like, they are still mathematically alive until somebody reaches the 83rd win, and when they do, the Padres will be knocked out. But that's how the Padres are technically still alive. And you got the Cincinnati Reds still poking around down there. They're a game and a half back, and they will be traveling to St. Louis this weekend.
Yeah, and the Marlins are scoreless with the Mets top of the 6th. The Cubs are losing the Braves 5-1. It's kind of happening.
So in Chicago, I mean, sports radio this week has been just a dumpster fire, especially with what's going on with the Chicago Bears. I feel like we could be experts talking about the Bears because we cover the White Sox, Jim. They are definitely the White Sox in the NFL right now. So that's not a very fun topic. And then you have this whole Chicago Cubs situation going on. And I feel like no one has anyone to blame from a Cubs point of view than themselves. Like, for you having to win series on the road in Atlanta and Milwaukee, it's a tough task, man, no matter what point of the season. And I know the White Sox shocked us during the middle of the seaon, winning the series in Atlanta. Nobody was expecting that. That might have been the best baseball the White Sox played this season, is when they did win that series. So it's not impossible, but you put yourself in that position because you stumbled in previous series, especially like against the Rockies. Like, the Cubs had an opportunity to not be in this position. And as you mentioned, as we are streaming live right now, they are losing to Atlanta and threatening to get swept by the Braves, which is not a surprise. And then now having to go to Milwaukee, your big rival in the division. And Jim, the Brewers are just licking their lips. They will do whatever it takes to eliminate the Cubs so they don't make the postseason. It could be a very long winter for Chicago sports if the Cubs do not find a way to make the postseason.
David Ross, I'm curious what his just future is. Like, I've always been skeptical of him. Like, it's a case of like, he's got media training. He was the popular veteran go-to guy when he was a player in terms of going to the media and having quotes for people. And so, like, when it came to, watching him versus Pedro Grifol, watching Grifol just have nothing to say over and over again, while like Ross in a rebuilding situation could at least crack jokes, could at least, lay down some law and lay down some standards in a way like where Grifol, like, he had a one-on-one interview with Lamont Pope at the Tribune and just like still offers nothing. Says, I'm not going to go into specifics. Is like, why start now? But also just why, like, the fans want to hear like something real from you, given that nobody likes you and nobody wants you around. Like, he has no equity whatsoever with fans and still just offers them nothing. He's just blank. So like, seeing Ross as an example, like somebody who might not be a good manager, but at least has some charm and charisma to paper over that, or at least relate to the public well enough to share some frustration or understand what the public might want to hear, whereas Grifol's got nothing. But, with this kind of collapse happening, and, certainly some of his decisions have been front and center, some weird bunting decisions, the bullpen's kind of falling apart, which might not be him, but also like that tends to fall back to the manager, like some really spectacular losses late against the Braves. Like, they do look like they're choking a little bit, and it's gonna be hard for a manager who hasn't won anything before to hang with it. So I'm curious, like, what his status will be. And if they fire David Ross after this season while keeping Pedro Grifol around, just like, it's watching the Cubs with new manager envy is going to be another frustrating point of the season. Just understand the way the White Sox just have a governor on how excited you could possibly be about them at any given time. Just like, hey, Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn gone. I'm thrilled. No, I can't be thrilled. I can't be thrilled because Chris Getz is here and he's keeping Pedro Grifol. Like, I'm not allowed to be excited about the direction of the team. So, I mean, that's kind of how the White Sox operate. And if Ross doesn't come back and the Cubs actually conduct a manager search, like, White Sox fans have to watch that, like, live through them vicariously to wonder, like, what's it like to hire a manager in the off season of 2023, 2024, because the White Sox aren't doing that.
And they'll probably flirt with the idea of signing Shohei Ohtani and flirt with an idea of a 9-figure contract with Cody Bellinger. Yeah, there's going to be some envy, most definitely, from White Sox fans and how the Cubs handle this offseason. But, if the Cubs don't make it here, it's not going to get any easier for them for next year, right? Like, in the 2024 season, at least in the American League Central, the White Sox could just look around and be like, okay, the target is on the Twins' back this year, and we'll see if they can continue this good play for another season. Recent history suggests that they won't, and somebody else will find a way to win the division as the only team with a winning record. That's just the state of the American League Central now. Not the case in the National League Central. The Brewers are good. The Reds are on the rise. I'm imagining the St. Louis Cardinals are not going to tolerate what happened this year, and they're going to bounce back next year. The Pittsburgh Pirates are getting better as well. Like, I don't want to say it's either now or never for the Chicago Cubs, but at least in the short term, this might be their best chance of earning one of those wild card spots in the National League. And Again, they had their chance, but they're stumbling towards the finish line.
Yeah, or not even earn it. Like in this case, like this is when their chance to kind of like fall into a wild card spot, maybe a year earlier than they thought, like not playing their best, not being a complete team, having some misfortune and still having enough of a margin for error to get in. Like they could be better next year, but as you mentioned, the division will be better too. So they'll actually have to earn it. It won't be a matter of like lucking into it the way they kind of have with some well-timed hot streaks and the disappearance of the Cardinals and just, as we saw, like the Diamondbacks, came away just being like, yeah, they're okay, but not terribly impressed. There's some, interesting individual talent there. Like I like watching Corbin Carroll run a lot. Like that's a lot of fun, but just, having seen them up close and seeing the record, like I kind of get why they are their record. Like they can kind of go cold a little bit. So I get that better than I understood it before. And, I still look at the NL and see just 4 good teams, and the other 2 wild card spots are unnecessary. Whereas with the bottom heaviness of the American League with just the A's, Royals, and White Sox, 3 of the 4 worst records in baseball, dragging down, like a zero sum aspect means like the top of the AL is a lot better. And sure enough, it is. So, this was the Cubs' best opportunity. I think the Marlins could say this. I don't think the Reds have any regrets, but the Marlins were gunning for it. If they come up short, they'll feel a little bit miffed in terms of like some players not panning out, because this division was, they can't count on the Mets being as bad as they were. So like they have to look at that. The Nationals might be better. So the Marlins are in a similar boat. So you could see 2 desperate teams here, the final week of the season, knowing that they missed some big opportunities with teams that were trying to win in 2023 and might have been able to sneak in even with a lot of things not going the way they hoped.
A lot of nervous energy when it comes to this race in the National League for the final weekend. Again, the Cubs will be visiting the Milwaukee Brewers. The Marlins are playing the Pirates, and the Reds are playing the St. Louis Cardinals. And the San Diego Padres, still alive for the time being, playing against the White Sox. We'll see if the White Sox can spoil the Padres' last-ditch effort of trying to make the postseason. But that will do it for this episode of Sox Machine Live. For those that are watching the YouTube stream, thank you guys so much for doing so. Check out our friends from the 108. Their show will be starting in a few minutes here at 8 p.m. Central Time at youtube.com/from the 108. If you're watching the video recording of this, thank you so much for watching a video on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. Please subscribe to the channel. We greatly appreciate it. And you can follow us on social media. We're everywhere now. X/Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky. We're at Sox Machine. You can follow me there at SoxMachine_Josh. We always take the audio from the Sox Machine live streams and upload them into our podcast feed, which you can subscribe to the Sox Machine podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. If you enjoy our work and want more, you can get more by becoming a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/SoxMachine, where our Patreon supporters get exclusive content and also ad-free versions of both the podcast and website. Monthly plans start at $2, or you can save with an annual subscription. Again, sign up at patreon.com/SoxMachine. Sox Machine Live is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for watching and listening.